We sort of use the excuse, oh, but he's got nuclear weapons. But actually, I think we're pretty secure in the knowledge that this is an old school war. And if we matched his arms and allowed actually Ukraine unfettered ability to retaliate, we don't even let them do that, let alone, implicate NATO boots on the ground. But the truth is, Claire's absolutely spot on. We don't have the appetite on so many different metrics. Birth rate, as has been discussed ad infinitum over the last 24 hours, is crashed right across Europe. There are no surplus children. People don't want to send their only child into battle.
We'll start with that pretty horrific attack in Kyiv overnight by Russia. Both the UK and European Union have summoned their respective Russian ambassadors. Over 21 people killed in the attack, but also British and EU government buildings were hit. It's the most deadly aerial attack on Kyiv since Donald Trump's it's the second, actually, most significant aerial attack on the city, and is the largest attack to come on Ukraine since Donald Trump's summit in Alaska with Vladimir Putin. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemned the attack.
I'm outraged by the attack on Kyiv, also hitting our EU offices. This was the deadliest drone and missile attack on the capital since July. And this is another grim reminder of what is at stake. It shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women and children, and even targeting the European Union. This is why we are keeping maximum pressure on Russia.
Well, I've been speaking to Sir Malcolm Rifkin this evening, the former Foreign Secretary and visiting Professor of War Studies at King's College. He told me why he believes Donald Trump has been exposed.
If this was China, they would say he's a paper tiger. In other words, someone who sounds fierce, but is toothless at the end of the event. And that is very disturbing. I take no pleasure in making these comments, because when the President of the United States cannot be believed when he issues a clear threat to a potential aggressor as to what will happen if that aggression happens, how will that be received in Taiwan, facing possible invasion by China, and having been promised help and assistance by the United States? Who else will take comfort from that? So there are wider repercussions.
Yeah, a significant attack, and we look further away from any kind of ceasefire or peace deal than ever before. Tessa Dunlop, over to you. Does this attack overnight make a mockery of Donald Trump, the Alaska summit, and his talk of progression in the White House a few days after that summit?
Well, it's extraordinary to me the way in which nobody called Trump out for treating Putin like an equal, an adversary, as if we were back in the Cold War, the days of the USSR, when Russia had the Warsaw Pact behind it and great swathes of the world's map were pink in a communist response, tipping their caps to Moscow. And instead, this man in charge of the 11th economy in the world gets the red carpet treatment, gets everything he wants, because Putin actually is the only other great pretender alongside Trump who believes that we're in that era. And he wants, like Khrushchev wanted, like Brezhnev wanted, he wants to be recognized. He doesn't really care about satellite states like Ukraine. I mean, he does. He wants the land. He wants it. He considers it part of Russia. Ukraine literally means the edge of Russia. But what he really wants is to be, if he can't be treated like a partner by the US, he wants to be seen as a real adversary. And on the comment of paper tiger, Rifkin's absolutely spot on. But actually, America was exposed as a paper tiger when we pulled out, alongside, bearing in mind Britain had its fingerprints all over this as well, when we pulled out of Afghanistan. No coincidence that 6 months later, Putin tries to roll into Ukraine. And yes, he's quite right. There will be another chain reaction, because at the moment, we no longer have our superpower protecting our backs. America it's just off the wall.
Claire Fox, why does he continue to dance around this? Why doesn't he, as the most richly resourced armed forces military power in the world, alongside his NATO colleagues if needed, why don't they once and for all expel Russia from Ukraine? Why don't they go in heavy on this? Why are they, as some people interpret it, facilitating, cowing to Vladimir Putin isn't enough.
Yeah, sorry. I think we have to ask the question, why aren't we either? I'm completely infuriated by what happened in relation to the Alaska summit. And obviously it was distasteful, the way that Putin was treated as an equal and so on in the ways that Tessa has described. But I think we have to remember, that whilst we're pointing the finger over there, that Europe is the second largest importer of Russian oil and gas after China. So for all the rhetorical bravado, the amount that we spend on arms given to Ukraine that could have actually helped them win is dwarfed by the amount still being spent on Russian fossil fuels. So, EU member states last year just spent 21.9 billion on Russian oil and gas last year. I mean, that could have helped the Ukrainians. So I do have some anxiety about Sir Malcolm Rifkin pointing the finger solely at Trump, because I think that the West in general has not played this very well at all. Now, why Trump is behaving in the way, I mean, we can all be bemused. He is not somebody that I consider to have great geopolitical insight, but he undoubtedly wants peace. He's been spun a line by Putin. But it's just that we in Europe do understand that Putin is the aggressor, but we can huff and puff. But if we don't do anything about it, there's no point just huffing and puffing and blaming Trump.
Why are we being so nervous about it, Claire?
Well, I think that in the end, we haven't got the will to see it through. And ironically, that's what Trump said to Europe when he got elected, when he said, I'm not prepared to have you, hang on to my coattails while we spend all the money and you lot just take all the glory. In some ways, that's what he said, isn't it? And it can be crass and crude. But I have long worried that this war is dragged out because Europe itself, the West in general, did not act decisively enough. And before Trump, we did have President Biden, who again talked a good talk, but actually was very slow. It was never decisively dealt with. And there is, it seems to me, some ambivalence about taking a lead on this.
Yeah, there was a great piece.
I agree.
Go on. Sorry, Tessa, carry on.
Well, Putin only speaks the language of bombs and bullets. And I think we prevaricate and we sort of use the excuse, but he's got nuclear weapons. But actually, I think we're pretty secure in the knowledge that this is an old school war. And if we matched his arms and allowed actually Ukraine unfettered ability to retaliate, we don't even let them do that, let alone, implicate NATO boots on the ground. But the truth is, Claire's absolutely spot on. We don't have the appetite on so many different metrics. Birth rate, as has been discussed ad infinitum over the last 24 hours, is crashed right across Europe. There are no surplus children. People don't want to send their only child into battle. You can see now the turn, even in the country that's fighting for its life, Ukraine. And I'm sitting here this evening, just 100 kilometers away from Ukraine. It all feels much nearer. And the Romanian response to that is also extraordinarily divided. They border Ukraine, they border the Moldovan Republic, and they never announce publicly how much they support the Ukrainian war in case it's weaponized against them by the right, and also in case it imperils them, because Putin, guess what, is within reach just across the Black Sea. So lots of different countries in Europe have lots of different reasons actually to not push this through in lockstep. I've got to say the one exception there's two exceptions. Estonia and Poland have been absolutely outstanding, but they can't do it on their own.
But where you are, sorry, Tessa, I'll start that again. You're in Romania. It's a member of the European Union. Why, what is the point of the European Union? What is the point of NATO, I suppose many might argue, although Ukraine isn't a NATO country, so maybe we understand a slight bit of complexity there. But what is the point of the European Union if Romania can't feel emboldened to be strong in their response or open about how much they're supporting Ukraine?
Well, is that the EU's remit? or is it NATO's remit? I've got to say, actually, they are building the biggest NATO airfield right now, Cuglaceanu, just on the Black Sea in Romania. But it's really interesting how it became so politically divisive. You might recall at Christmas, they dramatically cancelled their presidential election and they were called out by the American administration for doing so in the nick of time. For those who believe in the EU and NATO and forces like that, they voted in a sort of equivalent of Keir Starmer, who's doing about as well. But what's interesting is that the parliament here is 100% entirely in coalition, literally like the Labour Party and the Conservative Party together in coalition, just to block out the right, the Our Party. And that is a party which is almost overtly pro-Russian because they're afraid. That's the truth.
Look, Claire, why is Donald Trump getting involved in a fight that he doesn't know whether he can win? Does he think he can win this fight? It's just puzzling, because he'll come out and say some strong words one day and then come out and look very conciliatory towards Vladimir Putin the next day. It is confusing, and that means that lack of clarity spreads to EU nations, spreads to other Western nations. You know, should he not be getting involved in this fight unless he knows he can win it? Where's his head at?
Well, I think he genuinely wants to bring peace to the world, and we can mock that and say that his strategy is no use. But he's obviously completely misread the Putin situation. We much discussed that he thinks that he can go and do a deal with Putin, and Putin has made a mockery of that. We know that. But I think, honestly, when we're talking about why is it that we in Europe are also, kind of almost petrified by not knowing what to do or how to react, partly it is because we haven't got used to the fact that the world order is changing. We're in the midst of the new world order. And I think that European nation states have to stand on their own 2 feet. This bit I do agree with Trump on, as it were, which is we're waiting. It's like that picture when, you had all those European leaders, including Keir Starmer, sitting outside like the headmaster's office. Do you know what I mean? He then has a meeting with them, and then he found the big guy, Putin, right? And so I think that this notion of being dependent on America is obviously the thing which gives Donald Trump the sense that he still runs the world. And I'm suggesting that if we were serious about the importance of sovereignty, the importance of standing up the notion of borders not being invaded, by the way, issues of sovereignty and borders not being invaded, something which Western countries have been, let's put it this way, rather ambivalent about, particularly in the EU, then actually maybe we should actually act independently. But all that's happened is we've got this coalition of the willing. I'm not mean to be mocking, but I did laugh when I heard that the UK's response to the absolute savagery of last night's bombing was to call in the Russian ambassador. Yeah. It's like calling in a naughty schoolboy.
Yeah.
I did think, oh, for God's sake, don't even say those words, because it's so bad, right?
I did ask Sir Malcolm Rifkind about that, because it just seemed just so beige, doesn't it, really? Yeah. But he said that is protocol, that is absolutely what they should be doing. It's then what happens next that's the question.